Today we're going to be exploring the sources that detail the remarkable life and really the very complex career of Jerome Silberman, who the world, of course, came to know as Gene Wilder.
And we have a pretty comprehensive set of materials here. They really chart a very specific journey of an artist who wasn't just, a defining comedic actor, but also a serious writer, a director, and eventually a tireless advocate.
Right. So our goal here is to really get into the information we have, the details on his intensely private life, his creative partnerships, his personal tragedies, and distill what's most significant about his story.
We want to understand the full structure of the man, behind those incredible wild hair performances that we all remember so well.
And I think what immediately sets the stage, what establishes the scope of his genius, is that he was nominated for Academy Awards for two completely different skills.
That's such a crucial point.
On one hand, you have the nomination for Best Supporting Actor for his physical, almost manic performance in The Producers.
Right.
And then on the other, his writing. A nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay for Young Frankenstein.
A credit he shared with Mel Brooks, of course.
Yeah.
It just perfectly sets up this duality that we need to explore. He wasn't just a performer reacting to a script.
No, he was shaping the narrative itself.
He was intrinsically involved, often originating the concepts. You have this blend of this Stanislavski-trained, intensely vulnerable actor on one side.
And the sharp, literary-minded creator on the other.
Exactly. And that is the essential key, I think, to understanding his entire body of work. He could be the anxious Leo Bloom and the disciplined mind that came up with the idea for Young Frankenstein.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's unpack the path that took Jerome Silberman from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, all the way to Broadway and Hollywood.
He was born in 1933 into a Russian Jewish family. And the sources all point to this single, deeply personal moment in his childhood that seems to have set the course for his entire life.
This is the moment that connects his acting directly to an emotional need, right?
It's the foundational anecdote. It's really the origin story of his comedy, and it's rooted not in a desire for applause, but in profound caring.
Oh, so what happened?
When he was just 8 years old, his mother, Jean, was diagnosed with rheumatic fever. Her doctor pulled young Jerome aside and gave him this very specific, very weighty instruction. He said, "Try and make her laugh."
Wow, at 8 years old.
At 8 years old. So this created an immediate and profound link in his mind. Performance was a duty, humor was a serious form of medicine.
So his first and most important audience was his ailing mother.
Exactly. And that motivation fueled his earliest efforts. He started studying acting formally, and he had his first paying performance at 15.
The Shakespearean role, Balthazar.
Romeo's servant. So the interest was there, it was cemented, but the journey right after this was marked by a really devastating personal trauma.
This is when he was sent away to school.
Yes. His mother sent him to Black Fox, a military institute in Hollywood. The sources are very clear that this was an extremely traumatic experience for him.
He was bullied relentlessly, and the accounts say he was sexually assaulted.
Yes, primarily because he was the only Jewish boy at the institution.
It's deeply disturbing context to have for such a beloved comedic figure. It's impossible to ignore the gravity of that experience, of feeling so isolated and violated for who he was.
It's essential to acknowledge. I mean, when you look at the roles he later chose, characters defined by this deep vulnerability, this almost paralyzing anxiety.
Leo Bloom, Billy Bibbit.
Right. It's critical to consider this early, intense exposure to cruelty, to feeling like a fundamental outsider. It suggests that his comedic persona wasn't just, a whimsical creation.
It was maybe a way of processing or sublimating that profound anxiety.
It seems very likely. He returned home after that short, disastrous stay and just threw himself into his education. His academic path shows this real intellectual discipline.
He graduated high school in 1951, went to the University of Iowa for communication and theater arts, and then came the big leap.
Indeed. He was accepted into the prestigious Bristol Old Vic Theatre School in England.
So this wasn't just about comedy. This was about classical European theatrical rigor.
Absolutely. He was serious about classical technique, and he showed his dedication not just through acting, but through physical discipline, too. It's quite surprising.
Convincing.
Yes. After only 6 months there, he won the all-school fencing championship.
What does that tell us about him? Because it seems like such a contrast.
It tells us that the vulnerability we see on screen was channeled by a really rigorous personal discipline. Fencing demands intense focus, strategy, precise physical control.
It's the complete opposite of the manic, seemingly out-of-control energy he's famous for.
It is. That duality, the inner discipline supporting the outward chaos, is a defining characteristic of his work.
So this dedication to craft leads him to a professional turning point. The shift from Jerry Silberman to Gene Wilder.
It was a very deliberate act of self-creation. He just felt that, and I'm paraphrasing here, Jerry Silberman and Macbeth simply didn't have the right theatrical sound.
So where did Wilder come from?
That was a specific nod to the esteemed American author and playwright Thornton Wilder.
Our town.
Our town, the skin of our teeth. It shows an aspiration toward high art, toward literary significance.
And the first name, Gene, had a dual origin, didn't it?
It did. It was partly inspired by the character Eugene Gant, the sensitive protagonist in Thomas Wolfe's novel Look Homeward, Angel.
And the other part?
A bit more personal. He admired a distant relative who was a handsome World War II bomber navigator. He said the relative looked great in his leather flight jacket.
So he constructs this identity that's part literary sensitivity, part heroic American glamour.
A perfect stage name. But before he could fully pursue this, he was drafted into the Army in 1956.
And he served in the medical corps, which
Yeah.
connect right back to that initial motivation of caring for his mother.
It does, and he was very strategic about it. He got an assignment as a paramedic in the Department of Psychiatry and Neurology at Valley Forge Army Hospital.
And the key benefit there was the location.
The location. It was close enough to New York City that he could continue taking acting classes at the HB studio. His craft was always the priority, even during his service.
But this period was also marked by a terrible personal loss.
In November of 1957, his mother died from ovarian cancer.
The irony is just, it's wrenching.
It is. The very person he'd been trying to protect and make laugh since he was a child. The one who showed him the healing power of comedy. She was lost to a disease that would, years later, come to define the second half of his own life.
A painful, tragic foreshadowing.
It really was. He was discharged a year later, returned to New York, and dedicated himself completely to his art, supporting himself with odd jobs. Fencing instructor, limousine driver. The foundation of the artist was set.
So the next phase of his career is about mastering that art. Rigorous training in New York. We see a Gene Wilder who is intensely serious about the craft.
His training was the engine beneath all those seemingly spontaneous comedic outbursts. He studied at the HB studio with people like Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen.
But then came a pivotal move, prompted by another actor.
Yes. Charles Grodin persuaded him to move to Lee Strasberg's private class, and he eventually got into the legendary actor's studio.
For people who might not know the theater history, why was joining the actor's studio under Strasberg such a huge deal in the early 60s?
It was the place to be for serious American actors. The Strasberg method emphasizes emotional recall, training the actor to connect their own personal experiences to the character's inner life.
So for someone like Wilder, who had experienced that profound early trauma,
It gave him the technical framework to channel that intense vulnerability into a performance. It's why his most frantic characters, like Leo Bloom, still feel grounded and real. They're rooted in emotional truth, not just, slapstick.
and this training paid off very quickly with theatrical recognition.
He won the Clarence Derwin Award for Best Performance by an Actor in a Non-Featured Role for his work in The Complacent Lover.
And that led to his Broadway debut in what we now see as a historic production.
The original 1963 run of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He played Billy Bibbit, the deeply sensitive, stuttering patient, opposite Kirk Douglas.
Again, that fits the profile perfectly. The anxious, vulnerable outsider.
A role he excelled at. But the truly monumental connection, the one that changed everything, happened during rehearsals for a different play in 1963, Mother Courage and Her Children.
This is where he meets Anne Bancroft.
Who was, at the time, dating Mel Brooks.
And the meeting was almost incidental, wasn't it?
It was brief, but it changed cinema history. Bancroft introduced them. A few months later, Brooks mentioned the script he was working on, initially called Springtime for Hitler.
And he saw something in Ronder immediately.
Instantly. He told Wilder he would be perfect for the role of Leo Bloom, the nervous accountant. And he made Wilder promise not to accept any long-term jobs without checking with him first.
A promise that must have just hung over his head for 3 years while he was still doing stage work.
A very long time. His first film role was tiny, a hostage in Bonnie and Clyde in '67. But then finally Brooks called. He was ready to make the film.
Which is now called The Producers.
The producers.
Yeah.
Wilder still had to get the approval of the film's huge star, Zero Mostel, who was playing Max Bialystock. Mostel was satisfied, and Wilder landed his first leading role in a feature film.
The nervous, blanket-clutching accountant Leo Bloom.
The very one.
The film's impact is undeniable now, but it's important to remember what its initial reception was like.
It was not a smash hit. Brooks won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, Wilder got his nomination, but the box office was poor, and the critics were sharply divided.
Because of the subject matter.
The subject matter, the abrasive black humor. Critics struggled with it. Renata Adler at the New York Times called it black college humor. Many viewers just didn't know what to make of it.
Which is often the fate of something truly groundbreaking.
It is. And that rough patch continued for Wilder. He had 2 more box office flops after that, which critics said were trying and failing to replicate that Brooks style.
Which makes his next major role, the one that has defined him for generations, such a massive turning point.
It brings us to 1971, and the role of Willy Wonka.
The casting process for this is just incredible. The sources list a roster of huge names.
An amazing list. Fred Astaire, Ron Moody, Joel Grey, even Peter Sellers, who apparently begged Roald Dahl for the part.
And yet Wilder got the role almost instantly.
Director Mel Stewart offered it to him immediately after his audition. What Wilder brought was this specific, captivating balance.
The whimsy, but also something else.
The whimsy, yes, and the wild-eyed eccentricity. But underneath it all, there was a palpable sense of moral authority and a slightly dangerous edge.
The famous entrance, the cane, the fall, the somersault. That was his idea, wasn't it?
It was his condition for taking the role. The sources confirm he would only play Wonka if he could make that entrance.
Why was that so important to him?
His reasoning was strategic. He wanted to establish the character as vulnerable, cane-dependent, and then immediately shatter that perception with unexpected grace. It creates this immediate tension.
Is he a kind eccentric, or is he a calculating menace?
Exactly. You don't know where he's going. And that blend of vulnerability and sudden power is what made the performance iconic. Roger Ebert even compared it to the magic of The Wizard of Oz.
But like the producers, it wasn't an immediate blockbuster.
No, it wasn't. It received positive reviews, but it really gained its cult status, its lasting traction, through years and years of repeated television airings.
It slowly built that powerful, enduring legacy, cementing him as a screen icon.
It did. It showed he could carry a major film not just with comedy, but with real dramatic weight.
After Wonka, he had a genuine box office hit with Woody Allen's Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex. But the real turning point in his creative control came with a project he started himself.
Young Frankenstein, 1974.
This marks his full ascension as a primary creative force.
It does. The sources say he started the process by writing a 2-page scenario. He was completely committed to creating a real homage to the classic Universal horror films.
The black and white aesthetic, the period-accurate props.
All of it. He pitched the idea to Mel Brooks, who was initially hesitant. I believe he called the idea cute.
So Brooks, the king of frantic comedy, wasn't sold on a gentle, affectionate satire. What was the spark? What convinced him to commit?
It was an external moment of inspiration. Wilder saw the comedian Marty Feldman on television.
And he immediately thought of Igor.
He knew Feldman was the perfect Igor. This led Wilder to write the now iconic scene at the Transylvania station, where Frederick Frankenstein meets Igor for the first time.
And that scene went into the film almost exactly as he wrote it.
Almost verbatim. The character of Igor was the catalyst that moved the whole project from a concept to a finished screenplay. The result was just historic.
The collaboration was perfect. Wilder brought the high-concept framework and the sensitive straight man performance.
And Brooks applied his keen comedic structure and direction. It was an instant classic. They got the Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay.
They lost to The Godfather Part 2, which is...
That's stiff competition, to say the least. But they won the Nebula Award for Best Script, a major honor in the world of science fiction and fantasy, which recognized the script's quality beyond just mainstream comedy.
And right before Young Frankenstein, he also stepped in to do Blazing Saddles. That must have been an incredible year.
A powerhouse year, 1974. He only took the role of the Waco Kid after Gig Young, who was initially cast, became too ill to continue. So he was filming 2 of the greatest comedies in American history, practically back-to-back.
And after that explosion of creativity, he moved quickly into directing.
That's right. His debut was The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother in 1975. The idea came to him while he was on the set of Young Frankenstein, and it was another chance to work with his friends Marty Feldman and Madeline Kahn.
He was clearly trying to establish himself as a writer-director, not just a performer.
Absolutely. And this brings us to his second legendary professional pairing, the partnership with Richard Pryor.
Which started with Silver Streak in 1976.
And this partnership was born out of Wilder's insistence. He was sent a script, which became Silver Streak, and he accepted the role, but he told the producers that he believed Richard Pryor was the only person who could make the film work.
Why?
He felt Pryor was the only one who could prevent the script's racial dynamics from becoming offensive.
That's a remarkable vote of confidence, and it resulted in a major cultural shift. They became Hollywood's first wildly successful interracial movie comedy duo.
They had a rare synergy. Sidney Poitier, who directed them later, said that when you pair Pryor with Wilder, they make a particular kind of magic together.
Wilder was the anxious, straight-laced core.
And Pryor brought the explosive, streetwise, improvisational brilliance.
That magic continued with Stir Crazy in 1980, also directed by Poitier. The film was a massive success, but the sources reveal there were intense difficulties behind the scenes.
Yes, the sources confirm that during the filming, Richard Pryor was struggling significantly with a severe cocaine addiction.
And yet the film was a colossal international hit.
It was. Which really speaks volumes about the enduring star power of that duo. Their chemistry was magnetic, even when the production was difficult.
But Wilder's solo directing efforts, where he was fully in control, were often met with, let's say, critical resistance.
This is where you see the tension. The World's Greatest Lover from 1977, which he wrote, produced, and directed, was a critical failure. Critics just found the tone uneven.
And as the Pryor-Wilder partnership continued into the late 80s and early 90s, the scripts they weren't as good.
The quality noticeably declined, even though their personal chemistry was still there. A prime example is See No Evil, Hear No Evil in 1989.
Wilder only agreed to do that one if he could rewrite the script himself.
He did. But even his rewritten version was widely criticized. Roger Ebert called the script a real dud. Another review described it as having an idiotic script.
Ouch. And yet, even in those harsh reviews, the critics often still praise the actors.
Exactly. Vincent Canby called it by far the most successful co-starring vehicle for Mr. Pryor and Mr. Wilder, while still acknowledging the gags weren't all that clever.
So people were coming just for that dynamic between the two of them.
It really underscores the separation between their innate performance genius and the, sometimes lackluster material they had to work with later on.
This shift, I think, leads us to the most defining and emotionally painful part of Wilder's life, his relationship with Gilda Radner.
They met in 1982 while filming Hanky Panky,
which was directed by Sidney Poitier, so his professional and personal lives were always intertwined.
The connection between them was immediate, magnetic. Gilda was married at the time, but the sources describe them as becoming inseparable friends.
And that friendship quickly developed into a profound romantic relationship.
It did. It led to her divorce and then their marriage in 1984 in the south of France. Their life together was a huge public interest story.
And they collaborated professionally again in The Woman in Red and Haunted Honeymoon. They were trying to build this life together, but it was soon clouded by devastating struggles.
The sources confirm they had significant difficulties trying to start a family. Gilda suffered multiple miscarriages, and doctors couldn't pinpoint a cause.
And this period coincided with the onset of her illness.
Yes. While they were working on Haunted Honeymoon, she began experiencing severe fatigue and pain in her upper legs, which prompted her to seek medical care.
And this is where the story becomes just tragic. The medical system failed her. She endured 1.5 years of medical uncertainty and false diagnoses.
It's a heartbreaking and crucial detail for understand what Wilder did later. That agonizing 1.5 years of being told her symptoms were stress-related. It cost precious time.
She was finally diagnosed in October 1986.
With stage 5 ovarian cancer, the emotional toll of that delayed diagnosis is just. It's impossible to overstate.
She fought the disease with incredible resilience. There was even a period of remission.
There was, but unfortunately that hope was brief. The cancer returned and metastasized.
Gilda Radner died on May 20 in 1989. For Wilder, this must have been just a shattering loss.
It was clearly crippling, utterly defining. He later said, so simply, I always thought she'd pull through.
The combination of his lifelong dedication to caring for others, which started with his mother, and then this terrible loss, fueled by the frustrations of misdiagnosis.
It completely defined his second career as a humanitarian and an advocate.
In the immediate aftermath of her death, his focus shifted entirely away from show business.
He was incredibly active and intentional about turning that grief into communal support. He helped establish the Gilda Radner Ovarian Cancer Detection Center in Los Angeles.
And most significantly, he co-founded Gilda's Club.
Yes, a national support group organization. It created these clubhouses, these spaces, designed to provide emotional and social support for individuals and families impacted by cancer.
It acknowledged that healing is more than just clinical treatment. It requires community.
Exactly. And he also used his status as a writer to contribute directly to public health education.
The book, Gilda's Disease.
He co-authored it in 1998 with an oncologist, Stephen Paver. It was a profoundly personal act, sharing Gilda's frustrating, painful experiences with the diagnostic delays to help educate other women and doctors about the vague symptoms of ovarian cancer.
It's a rare case of a celebrity using their personal story for such tangible public good.
It is. And this new mission later intersected with his own health challenges.
He had his own cancer scare.
He did. He was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma in 1999, but he underwent treatment successfully and was in complete remission by 2005.
And amidst all this grief and advocacy, he did find a new life partner. He married his fourth wife, Karen Boyer, in 1991.
And there's a lovely symmetry in how they met.
She was a lip-reading coach.
She was a clinical supervisor who had coached him in lip reading for his role in See No Evil, Hear No Evil. After Gilda's passing, they reconnected. They married in 1991 and established a quieter life focused on his writing and painting.
Following his final feature film with Richard Pryor, Another You, in 1991, Wilder stepped away from the big screen for good.
He shifted almost exclusively to television and, most notably, to literature. His sitcom, Something Wilder, in '94, didn't last long.
But he found more success and more creative control with a series of mystery movies for A&E.
Yes, Murder in a Small Town and The Lady in Question. They're significant because he didn't just star in them.
He co-wrote them.
Precisely. He played a retired theater director turned amateur detective. It shows that even at the end of his acting career, he insisted on that creative control he discovered with Young Frankenstein.
His final acting role, though, was a guest starring part that brought him some major unexpected recognition.
His appearance on Will and Grace in 2003, he played Mr. Stein, Will's eccentric boss.
And he won an Emmy for it.
A Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series. It was a beautiful full-circle moment, capping his performance career with a major industry honor.
After 2003, his creative energy shifted entirely, away from acting and towards literature and art.
He spent the last decade of his life as an author and a painter. His output as a writer was substantial. He published his memoir in 2005, Kiss Me Like a Stranger, which covers his life up until Gilda's death.
But he didn't stop there. He became a serious novelist.
He did. His creative engine was still running, just channeled into a new form.
And what were these novels like? Did they echo his film career?
They often veered more toward historical or romantic fiction. His first, My French Whore, was set during World War I. Others explored complex relationships in Europe. It's clear he was trying to create the kind of nuanced literary narratives he felt were missing from modern films.
And we have some direct insight into why he retired from acting.
He was very clear about it. In a 2008 interview, he said, "I don't like show business. I like show, but I don't like the business."
That perfectly encapsulates the struggle of an artist who values the purity of creation over the brutal commercial side of Hollywood.
And he also expressed a deep dissatisfaction with modern filmmaking itself.
Right. In 2013, he was explicit. He said he was tired of watching the bombing, shooting, killing, swearing in 3D.
He felt the scripts being offered lacked intelligence and subtlety. So he chose the only reasonable alternative for a creator. He turned inward and wrote the stories he wanted to tell himself.
Gene Wilder died on August 29, 2016, at age 83, from complications of Alzheimer's disease. And what is perhaps the most moving detail about his passing is the deliberate decision he made about his illness.
This decision really encapsulates the essence of the man we've been examining. His nephew explained that Wilder chose to keep his Alzheimer's diagnosis a secret for 3 years.
And the reason was completely selfless. It was focused entirely on his fans, especially children.
It was profoundly compassionate. The sources confirm he kept it private so that when children saw him and called out, "There's Willy Wonka," they wouldn't be exposed to illness or trouble and causing delight to travel to worry, disappointment, or confusion.
Wow. So even in his final years, his priority was preserving the joy he had created for others.
It goes right back to that moment when he was 8 years old, being told to make his mother laugh. His entire life was framed by the need to provide solace through humor.
And the detail of his final moments is incredibly poignant.
He died at home, peacefully, while listening to Ella Fitzgerald's rendition of Over the Rainbow.
It's a deeply fitting image for an artist who created worlds of pure imagination while navigating such profound emotional pain. The tributes that followed, especially from Mel Brooks, spoke volumes.
Brooks said, "He was such a dear friend. He was such a wonderful part of my life. You can feel the depth of that loss."
So the sources really map this complete journey, from the sensitive child whose mission was to bring comfort, to the rigorous artist, the perfect collaborator, and finally the tireless advocate.
He was a fascinating tapestry of contradictions. Manic vulnerability on screen, deep intellectual rigor as a writer, and profound hidden pain in his personal life. But his gifts were these two pillars, the unforgettable cinematic joy he created.
And the sustained structural advocacy he established through Gilda's Club.
He ensured his personal loss was transformed into a mechanism for comfort and support for thousands of others. His greatest legacy might just be that final act of compassion, protecting his young fans from his illness right at the very end of his path.
A life story truly worth knowing in such intimate detail.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.